Hi everyone, welcome back to this Lightroom CC training course for beginners. My name is Jesus Ramirez and you can find me on Instagram at JR from PTC. In this video, we're going to discuss crop, heal, targeted adjustments, and presets. Before we get started, I want to point out that this is a training series. If this is the first video that you watched, then check out the description for the link to the playlist with the rest of the videos for this training series. Also, if this is your first time at the Photoshop training channel, then don't forget to click on that subscribe button and the notification bell. Below the edit panel, you have the crop tool. You can press C to enable it or click on the crop tool icon. This tool works as you would expect. You can click and drag on the corner handles to crop the image. As you're cropping, you can also rotate the image by dragging the straighten slider or press the auto button to attempt to straighten the horizon. Also, you can rotate the crop overlay by clicking on this icon, which is labeled as the crop aspect. And even though the yellow tooltip that shows up when you hover over this icon does not show a keyboard shortcut, you can press X on the keyboard to rotate the crop aspect. This is actually a Photoshop keyboard shortcut that I tried in Lightroom CC and it worked. You could also apply a predefined crop aspect ratio by clicking on the aspect dropdown and selecting any of these options. When you select any of these options, notice that the lock icon locks, which means that the aspect ratio is locked. So clicking on this icon will lock the aspect ratio, and that becomes useful when you manually select a crop ratio. You could also rotate and flip the image by using these four icons. By the way, there is a reset crop button here. If you hold Alt, Option in the Mac, the label does not become a reset button like they do in the edit panel. Also, the reset does not affect the rotate or flip adjustments. To apply the crop, hit Enter or Return on the Mac. The next tool is the Healing Brush tool, which you can access by pressing H on the keyboard. This tool allows you to paint directly over an object that you would like to remove. The Heal tool matches the texture, lighting, and shading of the sampled area to the selected area. The Heal tool works on a raw image, which means that you are processing the raw image data directly, and it can provide cleaner matches. Also, since any edits and modifications to raw images are stored in sidecar files, this process is non-destructive. You can use the slider or the bracket keys on the keyboard to adjust the size of the brush. Feather is how hard or soft the edges of the brush are. In most cases, it's a good idea to have some feathering on your brush to avoid hard, noticeable brush strokes. Notice that as I drag over the previous sliders, a brush overlay appears that shows how the brush is affected. The opacity controls how much of the adjustment is visible. You can simply paint over any distracting element. In Lightroom CC, you will find an area to sample from to remove it. If the correction is not what you expected, you can then drag the sample area and reposition it to sample from somewhere else. That will give you a different result. Also, with the adjustment active, you can use the feather and opacity sliders to adjust the heal even after you applied it. To delete an adjustment, select it and press the backspace key. That's the delete key on the Mac. There is another mode for this tool, which is the clone tool, and it simply clones pixels from one area to another. And the sliders are the same as the heal mode. Next on the list is the brush tool. You can access it by pressing B on the keyboard or by clicking on the brush tool panel icon. The brush tool allows you to make targeted adjustments by painting directly over the photo. Any adjustments to these sliders will be applied to the areas that you paint on. Start by making your brush larger. You can use the right bracket keys on your keyboard. Then paint over your photo. You will see no changes, and that is because we have not adjusted anything. I will make a few extreme adjustments so that you can better see how it works. This tool also has extra options. Click on the arrow to expand the extra options panel. Feather blurs the edge of the brush. Flow controls the rate of application of the adjustment. Density controls the amount of transparency in the stroke. The auto mask confines brush strokes to areas of similar color. If I check that box, notice that when I paint over this area, it does not affect the objects outside of it. If you make a mistake and would like to remove your adjustment from a specific area, use the eraser option. Enable it and start erasing away the adjustments. You could also hold Alt, Option on the Mac as you paint to activate the eraser temporarily. To create a separate adjustment, click on the plus icon and start painting. This adjustment will be independent from any others. Notice the blue dots? These are the separate adjustments. To completely delete an adjustment, right-click on the blue dot representing the adjustment and select Delete, or select it by clicking on it and pressing the backspace key, which is the delete key on the Mac. The next two tools work very similarly to the brush tool. They are both targeted adjustment tools, but instead of painting, you click and drag to create gradients that adjust the photo. The first is the linear gradient. Press the L key to enable it. You can click and drag to create the linear gradient. That applies the same effect we had with the brush tool. You can of course make any adjustments that you like with the sliders. To flip the gradient, tap on Invert and it flips it over. To delete it, you can simply hit the backspace key on the keyboard. That's the delete key on the Mac. The next adjustment is the radial gradient. Press R to enable it. This tool is very similar to the previous one. It does the same thing, but with a round gradient instead of a linear one. You could use it to create bright highlights, maybe even sun glares. Notice that my invert button is checked. By default, it is not. So if your radial gradient is affecting the outside of the circle, then enable the invert checkbox. Delete the radial gradient by pressing the backspace key on the keyboard. That's the delete key on the Mac. Finally, we have presets. Click on Presets to expand the presets panel. Before I show you how to use presets, I'm going to disable the single panel mode. Then open the light panel and the color panel, because I want you to see that the presets are simply adjusting the sliders in these panels. They are presetting the sliders to create an effect. You can open a preset panel category and hover over the different presets to see how they affect the photo. On the right hand side, you can see how the sliders in the light and color panel are changing as I hover over the presets. To apply any of these effects, you can simply click on it and it will be applied to your photo. You could also refine the presets by adjusting the sliders in the light and color panels. You can click on the three dots in the presets panel and select Create Preset to make a preset out of the current look of the image. In other words, Lightroom will remember the positions of the sliders. You can give your preset a name, and once you click Save, it will be placed under User Presets. In the next video, we're going to talk about exporting photos. If this is the first video that you watch, remember that we have a complete series. There's a link to the playlist in the description. Also, if this is your first time at the Photoshop training channel, don't forget to click on that subscribe button and that notification bell. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you again in the next video.